Alright Sam, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for doing the video. I really appreciate this. I think it could be one of the important ones that I do put up. A bit about yourself and what service you provide.
So I'm a nutrition and exercise scientist, qualified over 10 years ago, and work with the general public, helping them with weight loss, and I work with athletes as well, boxers, triathletes, range of athletes, footballers, to help them not just hit their optimal performance needs, but to recover well and for the health to be tip top as well, not just to kind of do nutrition at the expense of health. It's everything.
I've heard about you through, you work with some top boxers, don't you? I mean, I've heard through Andrew Fleming, who's a professional at Astley, the club I'm at, and he raves about the service and the diet plans that you provide for him. He said he's never eaten as much but still maintains and loses his weight for his bouts. And you work with Jack Cattrall as well, who's #1 challenger for the world title, isn't he, at the moment?
He is, yeah. Two great guys. Loved working with them. Jack was the first fighter that I ever worked with when I first started working in the sport, and Andrew shortly after from meeting Damien. Both, kind of great fighters, and Jack's on the edge of hopefully soon finding out that he's going to be fighting for the world title, and Andrew has just been put on the contender VIP card, so really exciting times.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for him, that, isn't it? And one thing Andrew does say about your service, that he eats more than he's ever done in making weight, and he has a lot of energy. He's noticed his energy levels have really increased under it.
Yeah, so the thing with that is, when I work with fighters, and I completely understand why, they're worried about making weight all the time. It's a big worry that's on their mind, and they're never, because the nutrition help in boxing, it's not everywhere, it's not easily accessible. There's only so many people that do it, as I've realised. And when boxers are constantly worrying about their weight, it's very likely that they'll go to extremes to make the weight, because they're that worried. It ends up being the priority, like the #1 main worry. And unfortunately, it ends up coming at the expense of what they should be focusing on, which is performing well, training well, recovering well. They end up being that worried about the weight that the boxing performance comes in at #2.
Yeah.
Making weight comes in at #1.
In amateur boxing and pro boxing, the weight issue is massive.
Yep.
If you're matchmaking, I've done matchmaking before, and the difference in 2 kilograms, especially at the lighter weights, in the size of the lads, can be quite significant.
Yep.
So I spoke to Danny Wright, who's a former professional who won the ABA national title, and one of the things he did say helped him was that he was big at the weight, because his knowledge, he was studying nutrition at the time, and he said that really helped him. So unfortunately, making the optimum weight is important in boxing. It's not. It's easy to say just eat normally, but the reality is you're trying to make that optimum weight for the boxer. So this is why this nutrition, the worst case scenario is that you're starving yourself, isn't it? And one thing I want to get across today is that is the worst thing you can do, isn't it? Yeah,
and you see that a lot. I've worked with, obviously, for the professionalism, I won't give names, but I've worked with fighters, that a particular fighter that the only thing that they ate for 12 weeks for a camp, one Subway sandwich, like a 6-inch Subway sandwich, once per day for 12 weeks. That's all they ate. So you're absolutely right. You've got one end of the spectrum where they're worried about not making weight to the point that they're hardly eating anything, and then you've got the other end of the spectrum whereby they might be eating kind of a decent amount, but very worried about where that's going to take them. Are they going to make weight? What's going to happen? So where I hit is the sweet spot of getting all the nutrients in that they need, but they're under the safe kind of trust and knowledge that they know that they're going to make weight. And coming on to your point before about making weight, is that making weight is important, of course. They've got to make weight, they've got to come in at the targets there, but we want to do so whilst having performance at the main priority, so they can perform in the ring really, really well, the best they possibly can, and the nutrition's supporting that. The nutrition's not just for just making weight, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And without giving too much of your service away, what types of foods should... I've been a parent where my child's been, say they're on weight, and I'm worried about that weight creeping up a couple of weeks before the bout, what foods do I need to be careful of? Or if you're a child watching this, what do you, obviously other than the usual chocolate and that type of...
I mean, the biggest tips that I could give is especially with working with amateurs at a very impressionable age, the youngsters, if they're under 20 years of age, they're very receptive to the foods, and the education that they'll be given is probably going to be a big staple for the rest of their lives. So if they're being told that there's good foods and bad foods, and bad foods are bad for you can't ever touch them, and to be restrictive, that's not good, because it can affect their relationship with food, and you see a lot of eating disorders in this sport. So rather than having foods off limits, it's the amounts and timing of the different foods of when they're relevant. So carbohydrates and things like that, they're very important in the sport. So the pastas, the rices, the stuff like that need to come in, because that's the main fuel these athletes are using in their training.
Yeah.
So
I spoke to, I didn't speak to, he gave a seminar once at Lee ABC when I was there, Kerry Kays, who was Ricky Atten's nutritionist. Still a professional cornerman. And one thing he said was that a lot of it is the portions, that size. So you could have, say, one big meal, but if you split that throughout a time period, instead of having it all at once, that would help your metabolism keep working. Is that how you look at it as well?
I mean, the main thing here, in terms of the important things for parents and athletes to take home, is that they need to not really avoid food. They need to be eating regularly, but they need to be eating within the calorie amount that is needed for them to get within touching distance of the weight from whatever time out that it is for the fight week. So if it's a week out, they look at where their weight is now, how long they've got until 1 week out, how much do they need to lose between then and this time. I know with the amateurs, they tend to stay closer because they could get notice of a fight at any time. But that is the general thing there, and then they want to not cut foods too restrictively, but make sure food's coming in enough so they're getting what they need, but also the weight's slowly coming down to get within touching distance of that weight. What they're actually losing in that time is fat off the body.
Yeah.
And then the final week, it's not fat, it's other things to get them within touching distance.
And just going on to liquids,
Mm-hmm.
what's the importance of water in training, and what's your feelings about protein drinks?
Okay, so
Protein energy drinks. So
Okay.
I know a lot of young ones do drink the energy drinks, don't they?
So hydration, massively important. I often see this being an issue, really, in that I see athletes doing sweat sessions and avoiding drinking weeks out from a fight. So they'll say, I'm going doing a sweater, as they'd refer it to. They'd restrict what's going in here, fluid-wise, and then they'd be trying to get all this sweat off, dropping weight. Yes, you will drop weight, but that's just water that you're losing. You're not losing fat. That's what you want to lose in a camp up until 1 week out. So what they're doing is they're avoiding the hydration needs, and it's affecting their health. They need to be drinking, and drinking before sessions, during sessions, after sessions, to make sure that they're drinking enough for the health needs. They shouldn't be restricting the hydration intake, especially when they're at a stage of their life where they're growing and developing. On your second question of the protein drinks, so I'm always a food first approach. There's nothing wrong with protein shakes. It's there are a lot of and I understand it just from marketing and stuff. There are a lot of judgments around protein and supplements and stuff. All it is protein powder, same as what you'd get in some of your foods, but it's just in a convenient option that works for some people. I work with some people that cooking a meal can be difficult on a practical setting. They might be working away. That's where protein shakes can come in handy. But generally speaking, if it can be done on a food first approach, where you're getting your protein, so fish, chicken, meat, you're getting that in at each meal, then that's just doing the same job. If you then see protein shakes coming in as a convenient option to either meet your target or such, then that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. And what food would you advise? I know you can't hold specifics, but say you're on weight on the day of the bout and you're thinking, oh no, I can't eat anything now, I'm bang on. What would you advise that you can eat there, that you're not going to put too much on? Or So it is a bit of a quandary, that one.
Yeah, it's different for, you know, are we talking a same day weigh-in, a day before weigh-in?
Same day, amateurs are always same day.
So with a same day weigh-in, if you've been organised enough in the weeks leading up to the fight, and then in the final week you should have less to shift in terms of lowering your carbs a little bit, so we get rid of the body water and the carb stores temporarily, but not too much. You don't want to completely cut carbs out. It will have you where on the day, you know, if you're fighting at the right weight, you should still be able to eat very kind of light foods, so to speak. So you might eat, like I say, some of the time we'll have athletes eating protein. So like they might be eating chicken, and we know that with meats and animal-based foods and some other protein-based foods, we know the exact weight of them. So the weight of that food, once you eat it, we know that that's how much your weight is going to increase by. When we look at foods like, and this is just in the final week, I'm not talking about any other time, when we look at foods like carbohydrates, the reason that we don't go too hard on them on fight week is because every time you eat a gram of carbohydrate, you store 3 to 4 grams of water with it. So that's a lot of weight that you're going to gain. That's why we stick with kind of chickens and meats and stuff like that on the fight week, because we know how much that's going to increase your weight, and we stay within that range.
Oh, that's brilliant, that. And just going on from that, you've weighed in at about, now a lot of the amateur shows you go to, you'll see a packed lunch that the fighters get, and it's usually a balm cake, a roll, chocolate biscuit, packet of crisps, that type of thing. What would you, if you was in somebody's corner there, they've just weighed in, so now they can eat. They might not be boxing, if they're last on the bill, they might not be boxing for 4 hours.
Yeah.
But then again, if they're first on, they might be on within an hour.
Yeah.
What would you advise there?
Okay, so for both scenarios, and this is where parents and the fighters have got it really tough, because when I'm working with amateur fighters and, you know, kind of compared to the pros might have a day before weigh-in, they've got much more time to recover. Amateurs, like you said, could be out within an hour, the stress is on. So what we do for those that have got an hour between the weigh-in and the bout is we make sure in the weeks coming up to it, we're on it, we're organised, we're much closer to the weight than we would be if they had a day, for example. So then when they step off the scales, we have a either liquid recovery drink, because they can't have a big meal. If they're straight out within an hour, the body's not going to digest that quick enough. They're going to end up feeling heavy and sick, likely, for the bout. So we have like a recovery shake that we give that has carbohydrate in, it has some protein in, and a few other kind of electrolytes that helps them rehydrate. And in that situation, best you can do in terms of getting the carbohydrate is really important as soon as they step off the scales, because that's the energy that they're going to use in the ring to fight. It's the main fuel source that is used in a ring. If they've got longer than that, so on a same day show, you know, we might have 4 hours. Well, what we'll do then is we give them the recovery shake as soon as they step off the scales. Then they'll have a meal, which will be, you know, pretty high in carbohydrates. So they might, for example, have say 200 grams of rice, which is similar to like a bag of Uncle Ben's microwave rice. They'd have some protein, so they might have some chicken or fish, but then we don't, believe it or not, on this instance, we don't go too heavy on the vegetables, because the stomach's very tender from the fight week. So vegetables really churn the stomach and fibre, so it can irritate the stomach a little bit. All the other rest of the time in camp, veggies, brilliant, amazing, but just in this instance, you just focus on your protein and your carbs.
Right, well, that's brilliant, that's Sam. Thanks very much for doing the video today. I'm sure it'll help a lot of people. And just to reiterate, your service is not just for boxers, is it? You just anybody who wants help with the nutrition, you got professional service for all that.
Yeah, so we help everyone with weight loss. We help athletes, especially boxers for camps, and we can, you know, with the boxers, we either do a 1 hour consultation all the way up to helping them step by step all the way through the camp.
And most of your service is online, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all delivered online mainly. We've got clients all over the country now, boxers, so some of them, the further they are, the more online it is, and if they're local, then it's mostly delivered online, but I'll meet with them in person at different periods as well.
Okay, well thanks very much Sam, I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on. Cheers.